and the Commonwealth were unrivalled, and she was greatly admired and respected by millions of people across the globe throughout her 70-year reign. Many of us will never have known a time when Her Majesty wasn't Queen, and her grace, dignity and leadership will be greatly missed. Can I now ask East Ayrshire Council to be upstanding, and we will observe a 2-minute silence. Thanks, Robert. Thanks, folks. I'm going to ask Julie for the sederant, and apologies, please, Julie.
Thank you and good morning, members. Provost Jim Todd.
Here.
Councillor Stephen Canning.
Here.
Councillor Ellen Friel.
Yes, I'm here, thank you.
Councillor John McFadden.
Yes, good morning.
Thank you. Councillor John McGee.
Here.
Councillor Elaine Cowan.
Here.
Councillor Maureen Mackay.
Present. Present, Julie, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor David Richardson.
Present.
Councillor James Adams. I have an apology from Councillor Lillian Jones. Councillor Ian Linton.
Here.
Councillor Reid, I understand, is on his way. Councillor Graham Barton.
Yep.
Councillor Graham Boyd.
Present, Julie.
Thank you. Councillor Barry Douglas.
Here.
Councillor Neil Ingram.
Here.
Councillor Peter Mabin.
Present.
Councillor Claire Maitland.
Here.
Councillor Beverly Clark.
Here.
Councillor Sally Cogley.
Here.
Councillor Kevin McGregor.
Here, thanks.
Councillor Linda Holland.
Yes, thanks.
Deputy Provost Claire Leach.
Here, Julie.
Councillor William Lennox.
Yeah.
Councillor Alison Simmons.
Here.
Thank you. I have an apology from Councillor Billy Crawford. Councillor June Kyle.
Present.
Councillor Jim McMahon.
Here, Julie, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Neil Watts.
Present.
I have an apology from Councillor Drew Filson. Councillor Jennifer Hogg.
Yep, I'm here, thanks.
Thank you. And Councillor Elaine Stewart.
Here, thanks, Julie.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Julie. Members, we're going to start the process pretty shortly, but we're into declarations of interest. If you need advice from David, I don't think there's anything here that nobody already knows. But if you feel you need to declare an interest in any of the items that have been discussed today, please do so. But okay, thank you. Into the business proper, and this is the Community Planning Partnership Local Outcomes Improvement Plan Performance Report 21-22, pages 4 to 106. We're going to ask Ian to introduce the paper, and Craig will follow on. Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Provost. I've got some slides to accompany the introduction to this report, and I think Robert's just going to share that onto the screen. Just while Robert's doing that, Provost, and good morning, members. Last week, clearly, we had to stand down the arrangements we had in place for the joint engagement session that we would normally have for community planning partners in the council to come together to consider the performance reports round about the local outcomes improvement plans and other matters. So unfortunately that wasn't able to happen last week for obvious reasons. But delighted to have the opportunity today to then present to members of the council the local outcomes improvement plan performance report and related performance documents as well. So with those comments, thanks, Robert. Cheers. So as I said, Provost, and this is an opportunity to present the LOIP is effectively the council and the community planning partnerships performance report. And when we developed the community plan, the 15-year plan, we built into that 15-year plan 3 yearly reviews. And in 2020-21, we produced the community plan review supplement. And that was the product of that last 3 yearly review. As part of that, we also agreed, the council and the community planning partnership, back in 2021, the alternative arrangements or new arrangements for reporting performance. And that's what's contained in our 3-year local outcome improvement plan. So for today's purposes, what I'll be presenting is some headline information from the LOIP. I'll also be covering the council's statutory performance indicators. So these are performance measures that are just for the council. So they are not, unlike the partnership performance, which is recorded in the LOIP, then the SPIs are just for the council. So I'll cover that as well. And that's Appendix 2 in members' papers. The third element of the papers that you have in front of you is another partnership annual report, and this is the Local Child Poverty Action Plan report for 21-22. Again, this reflects partnership activity in supporting the work that we do around addressing child poverty. And the last element of the performance reports that we'll present today is the Health and Social Care Partnership Annual Performance Report. And I'll pass over to Craig MacArthur at that point to introduce that report as well. So turning firstly, members, to the Local Outcome Improvement Plan Performance Report for last year. So this is a look back, but what it does show is a real flavour, and it attempts to showcase a lot of the partnership work that has helped us deliver the priorities that are contained within the community plan and within the delivery plans for economy and skills, safer communities and wellbeing. So as I mentioned, this is the first annual report under our new 3-year local outcomes improvement plan. It has an emphasis on case studies and some key outcome measures. It is much more for those members who perhaps are familiar with the old local outcomes improvement plan. You'll see a difference in that we have focused much more on showcasing some work and moving away from much of more of a statistical report to much more around case studies and also focusing in on a number of key outcome measures, and they're contained in the appendix to Appendix 1, which is the local outcomes improvement plan. Some of those measures, just because of the reporting cycle, are not available to us just now, and also because we're seeing the impact still of the pandemic on things like the Scottish Householder Survey, which is really one of the main sources of our data for a lot of these performance measures. So that's unfortunately not been reportable at this point, but as soon as some of that information is available, we'll bring that back to both the Community Planning Partnership Board and to the full council. The LOIP also aligns with our wider strategic context. So I mentioned the 15-year strategic community plan, but of course, just in June this year, Council also endorsed the Council's new strategic plan. So these are very much the Council and the community planning partners' strategic framework going forward. The LOIP also includes reference to our shared strategic priorities. So these are the priorities that the community planning partners and the council have agreed. And for us, for the next 3 years, it is really about maximising the impact of the Caring for Ayrshire transformational change programme that's led by NHS Ayrshire and Arran, as well as the Ayrshire growth deal, and I'm sure members are familiar with that. So you'll see within the LOIP some good examples of really positive work that is happening on both under both of those work streams. So, for instance, for Caring for Ayrshire, you'll see reference to the Doon Valley campus and the really exciting proposals round about that. That's one element of the Caring for Ayrshire transformational change programme. And similarly, under the growth deal, you'll see reference to projects that are now emerging round about, for instance, the Halo Enterprise and Innovation Hub. Of course, the strategic priorities are just two parts of that overall priority framework that partners and the council have agreed. So that this diagram, this sort of mosaic of tiles, shows at the top the two strategic priorities, the growth deal and Caring for Ayrshire. But then sitting below that, we have the 7 other priorities that, or themes rather, that were identified by partners as part of the last review back in 2020-21. So that's children and young people, inclusive economic growth, community wellbeing, COVID pandemic recovery, sustainability and the environment, renewal and transformation, poverty and inequality. And members will see the alignment with those key themes with the council's own strategic plan, which was very much informed by the community plan as well. The 3 elements that I mentioned as well, the 3 themes that we have and as part of the community plan is economy and skills, safer communities and wellbeing. And those delivery plans, although they're not contained within your papers today, they are available on the councillor's notice board for your information. They show the detailed work that sits behind the delivery of these strategic priorities. Turning now, Provost, to the next appendix in the papers, which is the Council's statutory performance indicators for last year. So they are set out in Appendix 2. The Council has 55 indicators in total. At this time of reporting, then, we have 45 of those indicators verified and are included in the papers. The 10 that are unreported, we will bring back again to members when they are available. Some of them are very close to being validated and being available, and others will take a wee bit longer. But as soon as we have them completed, and we always come back to the Governance and Scrutiny Committee anyway with that updated report, probably after the calendar year. So within that suite of indicators, we have 25 that are showing improving performance. So that's 56% of the 45 reported indicators today. So that improving position is welcome, but is balanced by, we have clearly got some underperforming areas, and some of that is impacted by COVID, and I'll touch on that just in my next slide. So that's those 16 indicators that are seeing reduced performance are also included within the SPI appendix. I mentioned the continuing impact of the pandemic on our indicators, and I've just provided a short summary here to show where that impact is being felt. So of those indicators, 28, 62% have been directly impacted. That impact, those split across those who had a positive, so in other words, the performance improved as a direct result of the pandemic, but again balanced by some indicators that were negatively affected, so that performance has reduced in 10 of those indicators as well. And lastly, on the statutory performance indicator position, Provost, I've included reference to work that Internal Audit have completed in the last year. In fact, just very recently completed, where they have undertaken some assurance work around about not just the individual indicators. They've chosen 3 kind of spot checked 3 indicators, but they also looked at the overall performance management framework and the processes and procedures that sit behind the validation process for the SPIs. And pleased again to say that showed a very positive outcome from the internal audit, and I'm grateful to Ailey Mackay and her team for undertaking that assurance work. So moving on, Provost, to Appendix 3, which is the Child Poverty Action Plan report. So this is the Council's 4th report under the Child Poverty Scotland Act 2017. It reflects the partnership approach to addressing child poverty. So you'll, I'm sure, be familiar then, of course, with the partnership of work that is taking place across the Council with Health and Social Care, with NHS Ayrshire and Arran, and with Public Health Scotland in particular. So the report today is a reflection on that partnership activity and work. It does cover a lot of ground, and I wasn't proposing to highlight any particular issues other than to say that it does align with our Children and Young People Service Plan. And it also does provide a snapshot of some of the performance figures again for that reporting period for 21-22. Ironically, as we sit here today, and I know we have a session later on this afternoon on cost of living specifically, when councillors and partners will join together for a seminar around the cost of living, and child poverty will no doubt be covered as part of that. But in this report, looking back to the position last year, actually we've seen an improved position round about some of the child poverty indicators. That clearly is going to be a different position when we come back next year to report on that. But you'll see within the report, we've captured some of those high-level performance measures round about the numbers living in relative poverty, the hourly pay in East Ayrshire. So there's a selection of performance measures included within that, and hopefully that will give members a flavour for some of the key priorities for the work that is then set out in the appendices to that Child Poverty Action Plan report. So it does highlight and showcase some of the work that we're doing, particularly around about the heart and the well-being model. So that help everyone at the right time model, which is very prominent in the report and in the work that we're doing. We touch as well on the employability support and the access to employment opportunities. The Council clearly last year, in fact earlier this year, as part of the budget arrangements, increased the investment into that employability and the skills and training budgets, and that's also reflected in the activity that's contained within the Child Poverty Action Plan report. We continue to maximise the benefits entitlement for those who need that, putting money into people's pocket where we can, and that financial inclusion team that we have within the Council and supported by other partners is a hugely successful part of our arrangements for supporting child poverty. And again, we showcase that work within the report. And we also touch on the creative and the innovation around doing things differently from this. And we touch again on the school-based Pathfinder project that again is producing some really positive results for the people who need that support the most. And then just in closing then, Provost, I thought I'd just look ahead a wee bit. So most of those performance reports are about looking back at the last year on performance. But really what we're continuing to do is to progress those strategic priorities, to maximise the benefits for all of those work streams that we can draw out from the Caring for Ayrshire transformational programme and the Ayrshire growth deal. We're continuing to focus on that real emerging issue for our communities around cost of living. I've already mentioned the session this afternoon at 2 o'clock following the Community Planning Partnership Board, and I'm hopeful that we'll have a really strong turnout from elected members and partners that session. Katie and Joe Gibson from Health and Social Care Partnership will be leading on that discussion this afternoon along with partners, and I think that will be a really rich discussion, and looking forward to that as well. I mentioned the alignment of the Child Poverty Action Plan report with the Children and Young People Service Plan. We've just received guidance from Scottish Government around about future reporting on child poverty, which has been quite prescriptive in how we report on some of that performance up to now, but they are now encouraging a wee bit more flexibility and discretion about how we do that. So it provides an opportunity for us to marry together much more closely the Child Poverty Action Plan report and the Child Services, Children and Young People Service Plan, sorry. And then lastly, we are continuing obviously to implement our thematic delivery plan. So the strategic leads for the 3 plans. So for economy and skills, that's Linda McCauley-Griffiths. For safer communities, that's Chief Superintendent Farouk Hussain. And for wellbeing, that's Craig MacArthur. They are continuing and very much committed to delivering on those 3 delivery plans. And we'll be reporting back on progress against them through our normal arrangements through the Community Planning Partnership Board. And lastly, one of the exciting developments for us in the last few months as well has been the development of this project management, this PMO office, and the benefits realisation approach which sits within my own service. And we've now concluded recruitment for that, and those new members of staff will be joining us shortly. And that's really going to enhance the ability for us to show that we are implementing these key strategic priorities for us, and importantly showing that the outcomes, the positive outcomes coming from all of that work. And we'll be reporting back in that to Council again very shortly as well, Provost. So with those comments, I'll pass over to Craig, Provost, just now, and then conclude the introductory comments before we get into questions, if that's okay. Thank you.
Hopefully it works from this distance. Right, buzz, yes. Morning everybody. So as Ian says, attached here we've got the annual performance report for the Health and Social Care Partnership for the year 2021-22. The annual performance report has already been approved by the IJB and it's presented today to Council for noting and any additional comments. The report will also be considered by the Community Planning Partnership Board this afternoon and then by the NHS Board in the early course as well. The IJB requires to report to Council at least twice per annum and this report fulfils one of those sort of reporting requirements. In summary, the annual performance report provides us the opportunity to reflect on our performance over the last year, but also lets us look at some of the opportunities and challenges that we face both now and in the years ahead of us. Sets out a performance against local and national outcomes for health and wellbeing for children and young people in justice over the last year, and also reports on our financial performance and on our priorities and ambitions for the year ahead. Our overall progress is measured against key national indicators and also against the outcomes and actions set out in our service improvement plans and in the LOIP that Ian's already spoken about. The background to the report set out in paragraphs 3 through to 8, including our statutory duty to produce an annual performance report, the areas that requires to cover and the structure and content of the report. This includes an assessment of our performance against the national health and wellbeing indicators and how well we've delivered against the key integration indicators. We also require to report on our work in best value, localities, outcomes from inspections and progress towards our strategic plan, and as you'd expect, all of that is contained within the detailed report. With this in mind, the report is supported by our progress against the core suite of 20 integration indicators and the 6 ministerial strategic group indicators that are designed around the umbrella of unscheduled care activities to support people to remain in their own homes, return to their homes as quickly as possible after hospital treatment, and the prevention of hospital readmission. In terms of our performance against the key data indicators, this is summarised in paragraphs 14 through to 18 of the report, and the data from the core suite of integration indicators does generally show a decline in performance compared with the previous year, with the most notable challenges being a rise in the emergency bed day rate and an increase in delayed discharges for older people. However, the figures for delayed discharge don't reflect that our overall performance continues to be well below the national average and comparable areas, with the vast majority of delayed discharges due to infection prevention control measures such as bed and ward closures or care home closures. If we actually strip these out, our performance is improved in previous years. It's also worth noting at this point that we continue to report 0 delayed discharges over 14 days. We also need to note that activity levels across services were much lower during the previous reporting period due to COVID restrictions, so the most recent data reflects a return to more normal levels of performance. Data is also showing a decline in people's perceptions of the coordination of their health and care and their experience of their GP practice. The figures for the care and support rated as excellent or good, and for people's ability to look after their own health either very well or well, compare favourably with previous years with only a very slight decline recorded. It's important again just to note that the data for the core suite indicators is sourced from the Health and Care Experience Survey, which is distributed to GP practice populations across Scotland. Local and national feedback suggests that necessary changes to general practice during the pandemic to minimise risks has had a negative impact on patients' overall experience. This changing perception, along with the impact of restrictions on other health and care services, is likely to have influenced people's responses to the survey. Importantly, the response rate was also significantly lower for this year, and the most recent findings may therefore be less representative than in previous years. Similarly, for the 6 ministerial strategic group indicators, we are seeing a decline in performance in relation to unscheduled hospital admissions, delayed discharges and emergency department waiting times. And while the data has shown a decline in performance, this has to be seen in the context of the global pandemic and the unprecedented impact on public health and the health and social care system in general. For each of the national outcomes for children and young people, health and wellbeing, community safety, public protection and justice, we have described the wider progress and impact of partnership services using case study examples and the voice of lived experience to illustrate the differences made for people and the communities that we serve. Summary of some of the key achievements include the newly established Promise implementation team and a commitment to promote and safeguard the health and wellbeing of our care experienced children and young people, the new Heart Wellbeing model that Ian's already mentioned, the development and implementation of the Drug Death Action Plan and the Rapid Access to Drug and Alcohol Recovery Service, known as RADAR, the work of the Intermediate Care Team in supporting older people to remain in their own homes and the best value review of older people's day services that also supports this, progress on the Mental Health Delivery Plan with specific actions on suicide prevention, and also the work of the Financial Inclusion Team, as Ian's already mentioned again, and the financial gains that they've secured of almost £3.5 million for the year in question. These are just a few examples of our progress, and there are of course many more within the main report that you may be encouraged to read and certainly ask any questions if you wish. Paragraphs 19 to 21 of the report discuss our continuing COVID-19 journey, including the successful rollout of the national vaccination programme and the lifting of social restrictions allowing a return to a more normal way of living. However, COVID-19 undoubtedly continues to have a significant impact on wellbeing, personal life and wider communities during the period that was reported on here. A number of the arrangements and the operational changes that were established in 2021 were maintained and revised where appropriate during 21-22 and continue even to this day, in line with national guidance excuse me, to ensure service users and the workforce are kept safe at all times. This included items such as the use of personal protective equipment, PPE, to maintain physical contact where it was required, to enable staff to work from home, utilising teleconferencing platforms to hold meetings remotely, and also adopting alternative methods of service delivery to maintain contact with service users throughout the period, using digital solutions, telephone calls and home support as appropriate. Caring for Ayrshire is a hugely significant piece of work for the partnership, as this will drive a transformation of how we deliver health and care services across East Ayrshire over the medium and longer term. Local engagement and collaboration will be key to achieving these ambitions, and while progress was deliberately paused during COVID, engagement sessions are now being planned for later this calendar year to very much kickstart that again. In terms of looking ahead, paragraphs 39 to 41 reaffirm our priorities in terms of delivery against our strategic plan 2021 to 30, with the 6 key items in there around about starting and living well, caring for East Ayrshire, people at the heart of what we do, caring for our workforce, safe and protected, and digital connections. We'll also continue to take forward our work around about the focus on the promise, progressing on our 21 to 24 service improvement plans, and undoubtedly, as we've heard us talking about in this chamber several times already, the implications that arise from the proposed National Care Service for Scotland. Promise, that concludes my presentation and also Ian's as well, so I think collectively we'd be happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Craig. In terms of the discussions, Ian, what way would you like to do this? Do it in sections and open it up to members for questions?
I think there's some merit in perhaps taking it appendix by appendix, so to deal with the local outcomes improvement plan and then in sequence thereafter. So, Promise, Jeff, thanks.
Members, I'm going to open it up. We're going to go appendix by appendix. So if you want to ask some questions on the policy and performance indicators, please, we'll start with Appendix 1 and try. I know it's might be hard, things might cross over, but if we keep questions, comments to Appendix 1 first, we'll get the business done with that and then we'll carry through the appendices. Is that okay? So I'm going to open it up to the floor for any questions, comments on that local outcome Appendix 1. And I'll ask Yeah, page 40 and 41. Yeah, that's the ones we're working on. Councillor Cowan.
Thank you, Provost. Maybe I can kick off the discussion based on some issues that came up yesterday around child poverty actions. We had a very constructive cross-party discussion on the topic of the provision of free school meals. So that was very constructive, and we made an amendment to the recommendations, but there was also agreement to bring a further detailed report looking in to what that provision does, both for making sure none of our children go hungry and every child will get a meal that presents for a meal, and also the financial constraints on the families. And as already mentioned by Ian, we've got the cost of living session this afternoon, so perhaps we call on Katie to explain that more detailed report that's getting worked up at the moment, because there may be some members that aren't aware of the work that's going on in the background, specifically around that action.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. We're having a session this afternoon that I think is going to be very well attended. And it might be an idea to use this part of these appendices for a further discussion there. Katie.
Through you, Chair, thanks, and thanks, Councillor Cowan. Yes, we will discuss in more detail. The discussion yesterday was a wider cost of living paper that we're going to highlight to you in detail. It was approved yesterday, a package of measures with cross-party support, but one specific area was around school meals, school meal debt associated with that, but also the context of food within schools. And members of Cabinet have instructed us to come back to Cabinet within the next 4 to 5 weeks with a paper that will set out the context for school meals in East Ayrshire, what the debt is, and actually what we're doing to mitigate that. So it's not just a matter of, writing off debt, it's actually making sure that we are supporting families, making sure that all young people get a meal that need a meal, and that we've got a means to do that, which we absolutely do. I can give you that assurance, but also going forward within the context of cost of living and food. And Andrew Kennedy is leading in that and has started the process of developing that paper yesterday, straight after Cabinet. So we'll be able to talk in more detail this afternoon, members, but it is something that is very much in our radar. But in East Ayrshire, we want to have a very sustainable approach to this. So we don't want to just say we're going to write off school debt. We want to understand what's causing that debt and how we help the families to mitigate against that going forward. So I hope that answers the question, Chair. Councillor Cowan.
Yeah, thanks for that, Katie. Going over to Councillor Mackay on Teams.
Provost, thank you very much for that. And again, Katie and Elaine, thank you for highlighting that issue that I raised yesterday at Cabinet. I very much welcome that we're going to have that additional paper in relation to it. I know that at this stage, our school meal debt is sitting in excess of £28,000. And I think we need to be absolutely aware, and I welcome very much the information that will come back to us to give us a further breakdown and an understanding of exactly who is being affected by that and what is actually behind that level of debt. And I think as we go through, and I'm sure this afternoon, one of the themes that will come through is the difference between cost of living crisis and absolute poverty. And I'm sure that will come forward in our discussions this morning in relation to this paper, and also be an ongoing theme this afternoon when we discuss a cost of living crisis. Because what we have to be absolutely clear about is what the differences between these two sets of circumstances are, because we have a responsibility to look at what mitigations, what solutions, what supports we actually put in place, and we have to be absolutely clear what the problem is that we're seeking to address. Thanks very much for that, Provost.
Thanks, Maureen. Members, any other questions, comments? Leader.
Thanks. I think it may be appropriate, maybe at this stage, just to kind of some issues that's occupying the minds of a lot of people, particularly in the Kilmarnock area, with relation to events at the weekend. In terms of feeling safe within our own neighbourhood. In Kilmarnock Town Centre for the last 2 or 3 weeks, we had some, disturbing crimes. One related to a football match where a pub was wrecked by individuals, and and there was some serious knife crimes as well in the area, and we're promised extra patrols, just a matter of 2-3 weeks ago from the police. And I know that as a concern all local members, we then had a situation where it would appear that Stagecoach took it upon themselves to close Kilmarnock bus station. I think this whole matter, creating such a major no-go area in the town requires considerable investigation so that this isn't repeated. I know that, we've got extensive CCTV in there. I know that the police were giving this, the town centre, extra policing. I know there was pressure on the police, and I would hope it wasn't the case that due to the circumstances, we know that there was a number of police out there for athletics arena, and we hope that that wasn't the reason why there wasn't sufficient police to deal with it. And I think our community are absolutely quite shocked and horrid that we've created a relatively no-go area in the town. I know my own sister was coming back from Glasgow and was coming back in a bus, and there was an elderly lady completely disorientated. That thankfully my sister had to take that lady home. She was just let off of the bus. That's, we shouldn't be training. Bus services, by their very nature, have loads of vulnerable people on the buses, whether that's elderly, whether that's disabled. That's their mode of travel. So to disrupt that in that way because of alleged youth crime, we need to deal with it. And now I know we've got a plan, and and it's important that we don't demonise young people carte blanche, but there's issues here still to be dealt with. And I know that Katie's prepared a very good plan, but I think that we need to maybe take this opportunity of reassuring the public that we will make sure that this doesn't happen again. And, I think in terms of communication, I think there's answers certainly needed why Stagecoach felt they had to close the premises, and why didn't they contact the police, and why wasn't an emergency situation flagged up at that time? Because the general safety and well-being of vulnerable people around the town, not to mention the reputational risks that we face for the town with taking this action. It was a massive action for Stagecoach to take, and I'm quite sure it must have been pretty bad for them to do so. But the consequences of that are significant, and we need to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Thanks, Leader. Councillor Boyd and Councillor Cogley.
I fully support the Leader's views there. I was walking into Kilmarnock Town Centre on Saturday night from London Road, crossing at the Palace Theatre. The atmosphere was absolutely toxic, and I use that word advisedly. So we really need to do something about it. I actually want to make further comment, but it's not an appropriate bit in the paper yet, so that's all I'll say at the moment. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for that. Councillor Cogley.
Yes, thank you. And just to add to Councillor Reid's comments, within Ward 6, we've been experiencing similar problems since the beginning of the summer, with people not using public transport, quite simply because of the level of youth violence and the youth intimidation. So this is affecting our communities massively, and people actually physically moving out of communities because it is no longer possible to live there. The level of youth violence has become wholly unacceptable, and it is a tiny minority that triggers it. But we're just seen to be completely useless in addressing it. So I completely endorse Councillor Reid's comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. Members. Councillor John McGee.
Aye, thanks, Provost. Totally agree with what's been said, and just to comment that it's no, as the leaders pointed out, and Sally as well, that it's not just in Kilmarnock. It's been happening in Stewarton, Darvel, I believe, and other places. So let's deal with it throughout the Shire. Thank you.
Not fair point, John. Absolutely fair. Councillor Linton, then we'll come.
Thanks, Provost. I mean, I think the points have been well made this morning, and I think Sally's point, it is a tiny minority. I think we should be flagging up the fact that since January, 21 million young people have used this great service for them, and I think we have to make sure that this isn't spoiled by this tiny minority who seem to be abusing the system.
Yeah, Thanks for that. Ian, Councillor Cogley.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. Just to go back to Appendix 1 and the performance indicators, my concern here, Ian, is that we're not seeing, while we've got comparative figures in relation to previous years, we don't have comparative figures in relation to what the national statistics are. So as standalone figures to me, these are actually not particularly meaningful. And I don't know if we can do something about that. Thank you.
Provost, so thanks, Councillor Colley. If it's the indicators in Appendix 1, which is the Local Outcomes Improvement Plan, then there are Scotland baseline figures there. If it's for the SPIs, which is Appendix 2, the statutory performance indicators for the council, then we do bring that national position back when we report to the Governance and Scrutiny Committee. So we give a much rounder position round about all of that performance, because we participate in something called the Local Government Benchmarking Framework, which is a national framework which allows us to compare ourselves both against a family of councils as well as a national picture. So I should perhaps have explained that in my introductory comments, but for the LOIP, there is a national comparator there, but for the statutory performance indicators, that will come back as part of further reports to Governance and Scrutiny Committee. Yeah, thanks.
Sorry, perhaps I'm just being stupid here. So in terms of the appendix that we've got in front of us, so that's page 43, with the first heading, corporate management and so on, we've got 3 years, 1920, then 2021, and then 21-22. Do we have benchmarking figures to compare with for that? And where would they be? Thank you.
Rob, just to go over, as Ian explained, it's a matter of timing, Councillor Cogley. You will see another version. There's further work to be done. This gives it clean. This is the council's performance compared with the council's performance in previous years. There is further work to be done through the benchmarking arrangements, as Ian explained, and once the further work's done, to then put this in the context of national performance, it's sorting the wheat from the chaff and the apples and the lemons and the pears and all of that. There is a further report that will come to Governance and Scrutiny Committee that has this information in comparison with the national comparators. So it's about timing, and it's about the extra work required to sort through the national picture and bring it back in meaningful form. But as members know and often point out quite rightly, there's quite a delay sometimes between, I mean, this is us sitting here in September 22 reporting in the last year. So rather than delay this part of it, we bring it now, and we bring the further information with the national comparison on the same 3-year basis to Governance and Scrutiny at a later date. And as always, all papers to Governance and Scrutiny are circulated and highlighted to all members. So you will see it, but it's a matter of timing. But the desire is not to hold this up, to get the further comparison, do the further work and bring it back. We don't always double report everything, but sometimes the timing means it's more appropriate to bring it when it's available, with the rest to follow.
Thank you.
Thanks, members. Any further questions on Leader?
It's just in terms of the stats, in terms of raw life expectancy, I think one of the figures that for me has a big impact. You know, particularly when we do, we look at the postcode lottery in terms of health, it's pretty shocking, when you see some 10-year gaps between. But I think there's another stat out there, and I know some of the folk in the health board particularly use it as the healthy life expectancy. I think that's a particularly useful stat. Could that be included maybe in future reports?
Yeah, happy to look at that. The set of indicators that are in the LOIP were agreed by the board following the last review, but the additional indicators you're talking about are probably in other sources, so we could draw that out so it wouldn't be an issue and report that separately. I'm not sure if it's in Craig's Health and Social Care Performance Report, but there is that healthy life expectancy, absolutely. And it is something we capture centrally, so I'm happy to look at dropping it back in here again. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely, sorry, Provost, it is absolutely shocking when you see some of our most deprived areas with a healthy life expectancies, a lot younger than me and early 50s. It's just, and that's something that's just we shouldn't be tolerating.
Craig.
Thanks, Provost. Just to confirm, within the annual performance report that I'd introduced previously, there is actually a section on page 4 of that annual performance report that details the life expectancy, which also includes healthy life expectancy, and it splits it down by male and female as well. So that's contained within there. So as Ian said, if it needs to be lifted up into different places, the information is already captured, but it's certainly there at this point in time.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Thanks, Provost. Provost, it's just a wee bit of background information, just in case fellow members are looking at the stat. Percentage of adults supported at home who agree they are supported to live as independently as possible. Now, looking at 2021, that was 86.2%, which was great. It seems to have fallen a wee bit there to 76.1%. This is just a wee bit of personal background and a wee bit of information I've had. It's really good news in the numbers of vacancies in the carers position, the support at home, because we had, I think, about 50 vacancies. Information that I've been given recently is that we've managed to get as a council those vacancies down to 27. So we've been really successful in East Ayrshire in recruiting in that area, which is brilliant news. And the other wee bit of this is a wee bit of personal information, but someone really close to me recently successfully came through quite a serious cancer operation at Crosshouse Hospital, and the nurse or the lady that's in charge of the care packages actually informed me that they got out of hospital because they lived in East Ayrshire. They got out of hospital much quicker than they would have had they lived in, other local authorities, because we were able to put a care package in place for, my relative. Basically as soon as it was required, which was great news. So it's just really a wee bit of personal information to say that those stats might not have fallen, or it might not be as bad as those stats would indicate.
No, we're justifiably proud and no pressure, Craig, to keep that going, that we're not holding beds up. So well done to you and all the team again. Councillor Maitland.
Thank you, Provost. Following on from what David was saying there, at the percentage of adults who feel supported has dropped. And I think that links up, and this is what I'd like to ask Craig, it links up with in page 41, the percentage of carers who feel they supported in their role has sadly dropped. And myself as a part-time carer, would be interested to know why you think that statistics has dropped. And if you could maybe expand, thank you.
Through you, Chair. So I think that this is obviously the unpaid carers as opposed to our carers that we employ. I think, as I mentioned in the initial part of it, that health and care experience survey is something that's distributed through GP practices. And I think the numbers this year have been probably not truly representative of what we would normally report again. But you're right, it's certainly fallen. It's also fallen across Scotland. And I think when you look across what's happened in terms of the pandemic, then the general perception round about support for carers at a national level has been different. I think it's clear to say it's been different. We do a lot of work with the carers groups locally, and we'll continue to do that. It's something that we absolutely recognise the value, the benefit of, and we want to continue to do that. So while it has fallen, it's something we do have a real focus on. We want to see starting to improve again. But in terms of the why has it fallen, that's probably a bit of work, a bit more work we need to do just with the carers groups that we engage with locally to understand what the challenges are with them, and then put the right supports in place to try and lift it back up. The IJB has a carer representative who sits on the IJB, so they're involved in the decision making round about the things that we can do and how we can actually support carers. That's been a vacant position for a wee while, but it's very recently just been filled, so we do now have a carers rep back on the IJB again. So hopefully actions like that we can start to really engage a bit more closely with our carers and understand what the challenges are, and then start to put some mitigations in place to hopefully see those percentages start to increase again.
Thanks for that. Councillor Cogley.
So could you tell me where we are in the papers, please? Because I thought are we dealing with it appendix by appendix? And have we done appendix 1? Are we moving on to appendix 2?
Some of the performance indicators were included in those questions.
Right, okay.
It was part of the appendix 1. Some of the statistics. Page 41.
Just to confirm,
Sorry.
you Provost, just to confirm, Councillor Cogley, we're still with the main report, and then you have from pages 10 to 42 is the first main appendix, which is the local outcomes improvement plan, and that also has 2 or 3 tables at the end, 40, 41, 42, but it's the LOIP at the moment, as it's colloquially known, and then the Provost has identified the sections for the SPIs, and the other appendices will come afterwards. Clearly, some of the themes is a bit of an overlap. It's not an exact science, but at the moment, the focus through the chair is up to page 42 and the LOIP report, papers and tables.
Thank you.
Absolutely fine. Sally, I totally understand, because sometimes you're going for pillar to post, but they were all in the performance indicators. So the questions were valid for those aspects. Folk, are we okay? I think we're okay with that. Yep. Councillor Maben.
Provost, on page 42, perceptions of local crime. I see it's a Scottish crime and justice survey. Is there also a comparable Ayrshire number that we will come up with later, or an East Ayrshire number? 19% of adults think crime has increased over the last 2 years.
Would that be Katie? Ian, sorry.
No,
Yep.
Thanks, Councillor. So that is the national measure that we have for the LOIP, but separately we also have, through the Police and Fire Committee, performance reports that are presented there, and there is some more local information around perceptions, and that's contained within the local police performance report, which is reported regularly there. So for the purposes of the LOIP, then we took the higher level one, that national position. Unfortunately, as you'll see, it's not actually reportable at the moment because of, again, the impact of the pandemic on the recovery of, or the recording of some of that information. But for the local perceptions, there is still some information that the Police and Fire Committee gets presented. So it's slightly different measure, but we do capture a local perception measure as well, Councillor. Thanks. It's just not in here.
No, thanks, folks. I think that it's got to be taken into account the comments. The leader was saying that at the Police, Fire and Rescue Committee, the Chief, Farouk, had said that Operation Unicorn will have an impact on policing. And myself and Robert went up on a Monday to the Lying in State at St Giles's, and we parked the car out at the airport and get the tram in. It was a lot easier, believe me. And we walked up the hill, and we must have met half a dozen police men and women from Kilmarnock, from East Ayrshire. So there would have been an impact, but Katie and the team have already met with the police on the antisocial behaviour side, and hopefully the plan that's getting put in place is going to alleviate what we hope. So there definitely was an impact on policing, there's no doubt about that, in our locality. But that was the same for every single council in Scotland. So it's just one of these things. Katie, yeah.
Yeah, just to add to what Provost said, so, Police and Fire Committee looks at our local figures, and that meets very regularly. It's really a scrutiny body, that, so we go right in to all the different details, and that breaks down, and that allows us to take action. And one of the actions that came out of our last Police and Fire Committee, just linked back to what the Provost and Chair was saying, is that we are going to have that walk around the bus station, and we're going to get a kind of a date set for that. I know Kevin and his team are working in that, because that's what the committee wanted, and that would be multidisciplinary. So that's over and above some of the things we've been dealing with recently, to look at the general look and feel of that. And in terms of, my engagement with the police, they did all move immediately to 12-hour shifts and tried very much to maintain business as usual during the period of Operation Unicorn. Now that, yes, the police were distributed through the AAA all over Scotland, so that was the distribution point. Now, that was always part of the plan, so that was embedded in the Operation Unicorn plans. But the issues that we had recently with the police is that there were a number of other violent incidents that took a lot of police away from the town centre. and where they had to guard a crime scene. So it was a perfect storm over the weekend. And, you know, to be fair, I'm not making excuses. These are my partners and I've got really good relationships with them. But we've had a long and frank discussion with Stagecoach and with colleagues from the police in terms of what we're doing together and what happened over the weekend. And we've learned from that greatly. And we've taken a leadership role in this. We don't have a direct role, but we've tried as very much as possible to bring people together to help to form that plan and to support wherever possible. And this is challenging times. You know, we don't have control. We can't see into what's going to happen one night to the next, but what we can do is mitigate and keep learning. And I think that sets out the whole area. But around the stats and everything, without taking it into a local position, the Police and Fire Committee, which I've been part of now for nearly 5 years, is a very good scrutiny body that good actions emerge from that. We have police, fire there, and they take us through their actual monthly reports, and then we tie in the risk management centre. So some members are aware of that, and I'm happy also to take a briefing offline with members that aren't quite so familiar with that to let you see the level of detail that we get. Sorry, Provost, but I hope that just sets the context a wee bit.
Thanks for that, Katie. And also for members, before we move on, if you know anybody in your communities that would like to be a special constable, there's a big recruitment drive with the police looking for specials. I haven't heard that word for a long, long time. So if you know anybody that'd be interested in fulfilling that role, very engaging and rewarding role, please get them to get in contact with local police. Right, thanks, folks. I think we've had a good discussion at that part. We're going to get into Appendix 2 now. And you want to say a few words with this part, Ian, to introduce and then stimulate debate. Thank you.
Thanks, Provost. Probably just a reminder, my comments in the introductory slides, that this is the Council's statutory performance indicator position. We've got 45 out of the 55 indicators reported here, and there is some movement in performance, but again, it's for members' consideration. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Ian. I'm going to open it up, members, for questions, discussion points. Councillor Maben.
Too busy looking at the screens. That was page 45, part 24, delayed discharge. I note it's went up 3,700, 3,800, and it's a big jump up to 6,400. Can one of the officers give me a bit of background on that and tell us what the reasons are for that?
Yep, you promised. Yep, so I think, as I mentioned just briefly in my own presentation at the start there, we have still seen 0 delayed discharges over 14 days. The actual number of delayed discharges has remained pretty static over the period, but the length of delays has increased, and there's a range of issues at play there. We have a number of what's called adults with incapacity, so people who with these sort of specific legal processes to put in place before they're allowed to be moved on. That takes a bit of time. During the pandemic, it took a bit longer, just in terms of those individual processes, which meant people were delayed in hospital longer round about those specific parts of it. But probably the biggest element in here was in relation to infection prevention and control. So this is where either individual beds were closed or wards were closed within the hospital, and for a period of time, a significant number of our care homes locally were also closed because of COVID outbreaks. There was nobody allowed to be moved in or out of the care homes at that point in time, just to protect and keep safe our residents. The consequence of that is that people ultimately stayed a bit longer in hospital before they were able to be moved. The impact of that is what you see here, just in relation to those increased number of bed days within hospital. So while the actual number of delays didn't increase massively, the number of days that people stayed in hospital was, in a number of cases, significantly increased. We're starting to see that coming back down again because infection prevention control is not an issue now that it was previously. So I think out of all the care homes we had, I think for a period of time, 80% of them were closed, probably for a period of a month or 6 weeks. So no admissions allowed at all during that period of time, which clearly has a big impact on our ability to get people back out of hospital and into those care home settings. So that's probably the single biggest factor at play there in terms of the increased number of days. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you. Leader.
Provost, I'm just actually curious about this one. Page 44 is 15. Coming a bit of perfectionist because I'd thought we'd managed to get all the school estate into A's and B's, but there's obviously one fell down somewhere. Can somebody shed any light why we've down to 98%?
Chair Andrew will take that question.
Thanks, Chair. It's basically St. Sophia's. It's been hovering about C for a while, and obviously was one of the reasons why we looked to put that additional investment in. And obviously just because of the current situation, it's obviously just dropped back into C. But hopefully, once the work's done over the next few months, then we'll get that back up to an A. Thanks.
Good answer, Andrew. Councillor McMahon.
Thanks, Provost. Mine's is on the fleet management. I'm always encouraged as we make that drive towards net zero 30 that we see our fleet moving towards electric vehicles and another small rise again for 21-22. My question would be around about how are we proposing to tackle the larger fleet and the larger vehicles we've got in the fleet, and when can we potentially see a move towards looking at the electric vehicles for larger vehicles?
You Provost, in terms of our small electric fleet, I intend to have all of them electric by the end of this financial year, as reported in the road improvement plan paper back in March. We will then go on to the 3.5 tonne vehicles 23-24, and then move on to the larger HGVs thereafter. The larger HGVs are the issue in terms of electric vehicles, given the cost of them, but we are also looking at hydrogen as well. Thank you, Provost.
That's good news. Thank you. Councillor Linton.
It was really going back to Andrew coming in on St. Sophia's, and I was just wondering if, my understanding is that building materials are starting to stabilise and indeed go down. I wonder if Andrew could maybe give us a wee bit more information on that, because obviously just immediately after COVID, the costs associated with materials went through the roof.
Andrew?
I suppose the straightforward answer at the moment is probably it's too early to say. I think we are still seeing tender prices coming in higher than we had anticipated, and also contracts that, and obviously we've reported recently to Cabinet a number of contracts that we've been seeing requests from contractors in terms of delays down to supply chain requirements. So I think that it's certainly, I think that the expectation is over the rest of 2022-23 costs will stabilise, but they're obviously still considerably higher than they were 18 months, 2 years ago.
Thank you. Councillor McGregor.
Thanks, Provost. Just number 17 at the top of page 45, just to ask if the increase on the spend through PCOS is just a knock-on effect of things being brought in because of the pandemic, and just for clarification, what the other procurement ordering systems that are not part of the PCOS system are being used for council spend. Thanks.
Thanks, Provost. Thanks, Councillor McGregor, and for the apologies to the members who were at the last GNS. We got a bit excited about procurement matters, but I'm glad somebody asked that question because I actually do know the answer. What this tells us is, as you see, the value of spend that does go through PCOS in terms of non-pay. And what you see is in 1920, we were around about 78%, and then in 21-22, we're kind of back at 78%, but you have a spike. That wasn't actually an increase in 2021 on the spend that went through PCOS. It was a clear reduction in the spend that doesn't. And to answer your question, the main element is the capital programme. So if you think about lockdown after March 20, the difference between 20 and 21 and the subsequent lockdowns was that initially the construction trade stopped. So the capital programme was basically paused of necessity by the government, by the situation, for around 3-4 months in 2021. So there was almost a standstill in the capital programme, which is why that went up by the 16%, because we weren't spending on the capital programme because the sites were all laid off and stood down because of COVID in the first lockdown. As members will recall, and it seems an awful long time ago now, and maybe that's a good thing, in subsequent lockdowns, the restrictions weren't reapplied to the construction trade, which is why you don't see it in 21-22, even though there was lockdowns. So the main system we use is Technology Forge for the capital programme, and the main element of non-PICO spend is that which we spend on the capital programme, and that's why that shows that increase. It's actually a decrease in the non-spend because the construction sites were laid off, as I said.
Okay, Kevin, yeah. Yep, thanks. Councillor Richardson and Councillor.
Thanks, Provost. Provost, it's just page 46, sections 30 and 31, museum visits and library usage. Again, it's probably 2020, 2021 in the effect of COVID. It sort of distorts the picture there because it would indicate that, you know, people aren't using these very important facilities. But I just want to say, having recently visited the Quentin Blake at the Dick Institute, absolutely superb, the exhibition that's on there. You know, Quentin Blake, the illustrator of the Roald Dahl books, etc. The numbers of parents and kids that were going through that was really encouraging, and it's brilliant. And I would just say to the MD in the room, really, you know, go and visit it because it's well worthwhile. I believe there's also a smaller exhibition of the Quentin Blake illustrations down in Cumnock, isn't there? So we're taking it out to the, you know, out and about as well. So, but it's just the figures. It was just really to point out the figures obviously look as if, you know, maybe our important libraries and museums aren't being used, but it was just to say, having been there recently, they definitely are.
No, thanks. A positive there. My apologies. It's Councillor Maitland and then Councillor Cogley.
Provost, actually, it's just an answer to the question about the libraries and museums. Digitally, we've gone through the roof and we're one of the most successful. So although we're not there in present, it's on the Leisure Trust papers, and I'd advise everyone to go and have a look at them. I'm very impressed with what the Leisure Trust has managed to do during lockdown. But the digital museums and the online museums and our digital library service have been hugely successful. So thank you. Is it now my question? Okay, sorry, lost my plot there. If we look at page, I'm not sure, it's Article 8, so that would be page 44, and it's about the cost of school meals. Now, I'm just looking for clarification. I'm assuming that the cost has gone up so much because of Brexit, inflation, COVID, that kind of thing, and we still have award-winning school meals, some of the best school meals in Scotland. So I can see from the statistic below it that the satisfaction level hasn't gone down. So are we still going to be working towards keeping the satisfaction level, and how can we do that with the costs going up so much? So just wanted to see what we're doing to mitigate against the cost of school meals. Thank you.
As with a number of the indicators that have already been mentioned, COVID is the reason for the spike in the unit cost. So the unit cost is obviously just a straightforward calculation between our total cost for the service and the number of meals that are produced. So the actual costs in 2021 was actually lower than 1920 because we produced significantly less meals. And as you'll recall, similar to the construction phase, there was a period of time within that year that we were providing meals to families in their house, but we also made cash payments as well. So the reason the figure is as it is normally we provide about 1.5 million meals a year. And that year, the statistics included just over 500,000. So, and obviously we have all our staff costs and all our ongoing fixed costs that are still within the calculation. So the reason why it's peaked so much is basically because we didn't include as many produced meals. There was much more cash payments and other and obviously just the numbers were lower during that year. In terms of obviously the food standards, in terms of the quality of service, in terms of our continued gold Food for Life accreditation, then we continue to operate to that. Obviously we've now got increased free school meals this year as well, and I would anticipate certainly in the figure that's not included for 21-22, the average cost will come down. I know that's already, we've not got full audited figures yet. They'll be included in the reports that will go to governance and scrutiny. And again, this year, will we see numbers increasing back to normal levels? We'd expect that figure to come down. That is also offset in recognising that food costs going up, and obviously staff costs go up as well, because most of the staff costs are included in that. Staff are getting paid the living wage. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, okay. Councillor Cogley.
Yes, thank you. Number 23, home care. Craig, what is the target number of home care hours per 1,000 population age 65 plus, please?
We wouldn't have a target for that, Councillor, through you, Chair. There wouldn't necessarily be a target in there. I think that's very much dependent on, obviously, we do individual assessments. It's very much about person-centred care, so it would depend on individual assessments, which would then sort of translate into the number of hours of care that we're providing. I think what we would always want to do in terms of care is to look after people as at home or as close to home as possible, to prevent them being institutionalised and getting into care homes, etc. So for us, if people are needing care, we would much rather see that delivered in a homely setting or at home. But equally, we'd probably want to see people, if at all possible, not actually required to have home care services at all. If they can look after themselves, their families can support them, etc., then clearly that's the first sort of priority. Thereafter, it become care at home, and only in exceptional circumstances would we then consider a care home. So there wouldn't be a target number round about it. As I say, it's very much dependent on that sort of individual sort of person-centred care that we would always focus on.
Thank you. So where we see the numbers decreasing, is that because the demand decreased?
Yeah. Clearly, there's a number of factors again at play in there around about the level of assessed need, the demand that's in there. So yeah, I think to look at it in isolation doesn't really give you the answer. What you need to look at is also the number of people looked after in sort of care home settings. The worry would be if you've seen that going down, but the number of people in care homes was shooting through the roof, it would mean that we're always failing to look after people at home, and they were ending up being put into care homes as a consequence of it, and we're not seeing that. So the care home numbers are actually dropping as well. I don't think we report on them here necessarily, but when you look at that separately, care home, the number of people who are in care homes has consistently fallen over the last number of years, and now we're seeing that the home care hours decreasing as well.
Thank you.
Just to give members, additional assurance, my role is solace lead for health and care. I see the statistics of people who are waiting assessment across Scotland every week, and the people who are waiting for care across Scotland every week, and we consistently come out in the top 1 and 2 in terms of the lowest number of people who are actually waiting for a social work assessment for care, and then the number of people who are after that are waiting for social care services. So the figure here is about demand. There's not a huge level of unmet need out there in East Ayrshire, whereas there is in some other areas huge levels of unmet need, and it's levels of unmet need that then go on and drive the issues about people getting out of hospital and not, so although the number is lower, it doesn't indicate that there's a huge level of unmet need, sitting there in East Ayrshire.
Yeah, now moving on to 54, waste recycling. What's the target? What's the target, Andrew? Number 54. So we're
To you, Provost. Thank you, Councillor Cogley. We don't have that designated target, but what you will see within our climate change strategy is that there is a target for a future date of 2025 for us to increase between now and then of what our household recycling will be. I don't have the figure offhand, but I can get it to you after Council.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. Councillor Stewart.
Hiya, it's page 44 back at number 10. It's the average sickness. I see hits really went up quite high, and I thought with it through COVID that we weren't taking COVID as a sickness. Has that changed as we've got to 2021 and 2022? It just looks really high just now.
Thanks, Provost. Yeah, so the figures that you see in 2021, you're right that we weren't recording COVID. The sickness was up to 12 weeks special leave, and that has now changed. The increase in the number of sickness days could be attributed to a couple of things. There is an increase in the number of people off sick, people waiting on operations, etc. has increased, so the long-term sickness has went up as well as the short-term. What I can provide assurance on is that we've actually appointed a specialist HR officer who has taken forward a project to look and do a bit of analysis and an action plan to address some of the issues in terms of the employee absence rates.
And will that come back to us at a later date?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Folks, that's Appendix 2, that part. I can't see any other. Leader.
I think some of the housing statistics are quite interesting. I think in terms of the sustainable tenancies, I think that's a good bit of work there. Just a wee bit worried about the void rent laws, but I take it that's to do with COVID. And I think also the homelessness figures are absolutely excellent. And I just hope that can be maintained, but I think it'll be difficult with the current Ukrainian crisis, but maybe generally some really good statistics there.
No, thanks very much. May I ask, where? Blair, sorry, Blair.
Through you, Provost. Thanks, Councillor Reid. Yeah, our void rent loss figure at 1.5% is a significantly improved position from where we were almost 6 years ago when I first came to East Ayrshire. You'll recall, Councillor Reid, that we were the worst performing local authority in Scotland for our void rent loss at that time, and we were under significant scrutiny measures by the Scottish Housing Regulator. I was pleased to note about 3 years ago, the Scottish Housing Regulator made us only one of 2 local authorities in Scotland whereby they had no engagement activity whatsoever across a range of performance statistics that you see. So it's a really improved position that we see. Clearly, we still have challenges in specific areas with difficult to let properties, but our implementation of our housing asset management framework has also made significant inroads and improvements to the demand that we have for our stock. That's also links to the sustainability, and we've made a significant inroad to sustainability. We've still got some work to do, clearly, but yeah, it's a much improved position as well. In terms of homelessness, at this moment in time, we are not seeing the correlation or between the Ukrainian nationals' arrivals in East Ayrshire and homelessness at this point, but it's certainly one that I update CMT on a fortnightly basis, and it's one I'm monitoring extremely closely. But what I would say is about locally is we have excellent arrangements in place where our relationship may break down for our Ukrainian nationals. We have been able to find alternative accommodation and not put a Ukrainian national at this moment in time through our homelessness system. Thank you.
No, thanks for that. Councillor Maben.
It was on the same thing in part 45. The length of time taken a number of days jumping from 46 to 74. I'm guessing, you'll put me right if I get it wrong. When you get a void and you get an empty property, you're making significant improvements to the property first before you re-let it. And that explains the number of days increasing. Takes time to do that, I suppose.
Through you, Chair, there's a number of factors which influences the time taken to re-let. What we took as a strategic decision is whereby if a property was due to get a kitchen and bathroom in the next 12 months, what we would rather do is do that while it's void to save disruption to our tenants. But in doing so, what that does is it takes additional time. And clearly, while we're looking to achieve EASH2 standards, so energy efficiency standards as well, we're also looking to do the works that are required of us at the point in which our property is void. So all of these have factors in terms of the time it takes us to re-let, notwithstanding that we do have long-standing properties that we have difficulty in re-letting. And the minute that I do re-let them, while it's really positive for the community in which it sits, it really impacts on my performance, but it's a good news story for me. Thank you.
Well, thanks for that. 2 points for me, Blair. Can you tell us how many families are coming to East Ayrshire just now, and what the proposal is, Ukrainian families? And it was really a bad, shocking to see that already in certain areas around the country that they're starting to be vilified now. I hope that we can manage, and I know you will, we can manage that wouldn't happen here.
Thank you, Provost. So we have 43 families that have been supported by our resettlement team. So that would look like a mixture of 62 adults and 41 children, with more arrivals planned for this week.
Folks, are we okay to move on? Oh, yeah, Graham.
Sorry, just for clarity there, I know we went through Appendix 1, Appendix 2. I would just like to bring up something before Appendix 1 and 2. It's mentioned separately. Page 10. Okay. Page 10 in the report. I saw 19 in the top and page 10 in the bottom bit. Okay, it's on town centre regeneration. So it's in the report. Just a couple of questions, please, to go through. It mentions 46 million approved funding for a range of projects in Kilmarnock Town Centre. So have the range of projects been identified in any time span? Does the funding include the Kilmarnock bus station upgrade? Because I would like members to provide with a short summary of the spend to date, the projected future spend, also reasons for delay. Is it the council that's funding it, or is it SPT? The general appearance and cleanliness of the bus station is extremely poor and doesn't help with current issues discussed earlier. My final point, constituents continually raise concerns with access to the town centre from Kilmarnock East. As I've mentioned earlier, I often walk that route. It's not good. We talk about place-making projects. In this capital spend, I would like access and entry points from London Road into the town centre to be made a priority, because at the moment in that area of the town is one of the poorest areas. Thank you.
In terms of Katie, yeah.
I'll have a crack at that, Councillor, and then I can bring other colleagues in. So yes, we have an amount of money on the capital programme against the town centre, and some of the projects are identified and some aren't, and we're currently doing quite a bit of work in that just now. We're progressing papers around a number of parts of the town centre, including the Galleon, the multi-storey car park, and some other areas as well, and we hope to bring them to council or cabinet before the end of the calendar year. In terms of the bus station, Kevin will keep me right, but that is externally funded, that work, and it's progressing well, and we have a full support. Yes, there's been some delays for a range of reasons, partly COVID, but also some of the work has been fairly technical around the engineering part, because there's a ramp that goes over the top of the bus station, and it's given us so much trouble. But we are there, and I think we're moving on to stage 3, and we'll happily issue a briefing to all members hereafter to let you see exactly where we are with that work. The aesthetics part is starting to come in the next phase, so that's the bit where you'll start to see things looking a wee bit better. The general appearance of the town centre, I know, has been raised in a number of areas, particularly most recently through the Police and Fire Committee, and what we've done is arranged a multidisciplinary event there so that we can understand members' concerns, and we can look to see how we can collectively work in partnership to improve those going forward. So it's really important to us at Kilmarnock Town Centre. There's a lot of big investment that's going to be available there, and it's so important for us that feels strategic and that also you're engaged deeply with that work. And yes, we probably would have accelerated some of that further, but we have been delayed, as you know, in capital projects and town centre because of the 2 years of the pandemic. But we now want to accelerate that work, and you will see some papers coming through my services before the end of the calendar year that'll start to make some proposals there.
Thanks, Katie. They mentioned the ramp. Can you be a bit more specific with the ramp? And also, I mentioned at the Police Fire Committee, the cleanliness. Nothing's been done about it in the past 2 or 3 weeks. You ought to see the weeds in the new paved bit and the amount of cigarette ends lying. It's terrible.
Yeah, through to you, Chair. I mean, I can let Kevin give you more detail. We can do that offline about the ramp. You know, there's been quite a bit. We've had to instruct engineers, etc. The construction is not something you would do now. Certainly, it's put a ramp over the top of a building, and it's caused us a great deal of problems. But we've been working hard to resolve it. In terms of the Cleanliness Council, I'll absolutely take that on board, and we'll have colleagues through the work that we're doing to make sure that we address any areas that you're raising with us. and also addressing public discarding rubbish and cigarette doubts, etc. It's very frustrating sometimes for my colleagues in greener communities who are doing their best to keep the place clean, and then the public are then littering again, and we need to probably do something about tying in enforcement and signage to try and redress that. But it's an absolute priority for us, and we will certainly look at the issues raised that you've raised with me a number of times, Councillor.
Thanks again, Katie. Just in the whole structure of the bus station, I really hope the changes work here, because we've seen what happened with the multi-storey. You know, I'm a local historian. I understand deeply the changes in the 1970s. The bus station, Burnsmall, the bus station, Burnsmall, the multi-storey are all constructed in the same way by the same companies. So, you know, we really need to make sure we get this right, and we don't have problems 2 or 3 years down the line where it costs us more money. So I'm really, I think that's extremely important. I've got grave concerns about a lot of these structures in the town centre at the moment.
No, that's a fair comments, Graham. The part about the access from Camaro East through into the town centre, are you talking about after 8 o'clock when it's closed?
Any time, well, the Burnsmall's shut, I think, around about 6 or 7 o'clock. Going for Camaro East, and that include people coming from Crooked Home, Halford, London Road, New Farm, all that area. The only way into the town centre is through the bus station. It used to be the Mall would like to have access, but that's no great area either. There's an underpass. So even during the day, you've got the underpass up through the bus station, and constituents tell me they're very unhappy with that. That whole part of the town centre has got a very poor connection, and to be fair, it's addressed in LBT, the local development plan too. There's extensive bits in it I've read there. So I keep saying it, I think we really need to make this a priority, that section of the town. It's been forgotten about. I know I've done Finney Street well, Bank Street well, but we really need to look at the eastern section of the town next.
No, it's absolutely fair, but unfortunately the Burnsmall was sold, council sold it years ago. And we're not in control of that now. And that's very frustrating for myself and all our colleagues, that we couldn't sort that access after a certain time. So, Kate, I'm going to bring Katie in and then leave.
Through you, Chair, just to say, you know, we've got big aspirations for that area. It's not ideal, and you're right, we've inherited buildings that, you know, wouldn't be built now. So we're doing the very best we can. We have, through our East Ayrshire Leisure colleagues in partnership with the council, we have a levelling up bid just now, and it's a really, really exciting bid that's been led by Annika Field, our Chief Officer. Now, we haven't had the results back of that yet, but that would start to look at that whole area around the palace and generally looking at access. So it is an exciting bid. I'm not going to say we'll definitely get it, but we're doing our very best to look at that bigger picture around the town centre, and we'll keep members absolutely informed. And of course we will be bringing those papers and engaging deeply with you to do our very best around this work.
Yeah, thank you. Leader.
Thanks, Provost. No, I've got to agree with quite a lot that Councillor Boyd is saying. But the only one thing it's certainly not been forgotten. Grim made your point yourself in terms of we're looking forward to the LDB2 and hopefully the success in the levelling up bid. But Grim makes a very good point in terms of that, and I've raised the same issues myself. And I've been reassured, and I've been up to walk rounds with Barry, McDonnell, and other staff, and I've been reassured that there'll be new bins and there'll be new seating and other measures. But there's still is just now problems with the brand new cobblestones that just were laid down 6 months ago have got significant weeds, and there's certainly a big issue. I know the bins are going to get replaced, but there is a big issue with litter control and the cigarette ends everywhere. And somebody is nowadays a regular user of the bus station. It does feel generally neglected, and I think for the interim period, I think we need to give it a wee bit more vigilance in terms of just basic control of weeds and general maintenance. And I mean, even some I noticed there was one again, Claire's favourite subject, graffiti, and the brand new tiles. There was last weekend there was obscene graffiti and tiles that were only put down about a month ago. It's just we really need to make sure that all our efforts are. It's a key focal area. And you're absolutely right, Graham. Whether you're going east or west or even north and south, but it is a key area, particularly as we try and open up the nighttime economy as well. It does congregate there. That's why I think there has been so much reaction to the issue with the bus station, with the local people in the town and surrounding areas. We've really got to, pay a wee bit of extra vigilance there. And I can assure you, as much as we can, we can do. I think we've got to work together, and some of that was within Katie's plan, and I think we've really got to implement that and keep a good eye to it. And when it's finished, hopefully we'll have a nice, glowing, shiny bus station, and with other measures, it'll transform the area. And thanks, Robert.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Maitland and then Councillor Richardson. If it's about the issue with the bus station, and then, yeah, that's good. So two come in, and then Kevin can maybe reply to that. Councillor Maitland.
Thank you, Provost, and Graham. I agree with much of what you say, but I would say my side of the town's in a worse state than London Road, but that's another argument. We had, when I was a shopkeeper, and it's still going on, the Clean My Area. Now, most of the small shops do clean their area, and the pubs clean their areas. Don't see Marks and Spencer's outside sweeping up their stuff either, or some of the bigger, some of them have gone now, sadly, but some of the bigger shops, etc., out their back, their areas are a mess as well. So I would like to see the I Clean My Area extended. I would also like to see it extended to homeowners. Unfortunately, I also have to clean my own area because I live in the town. There's permanent litter out there. So listen, I'm not going to go on about this forever, but there's yes, I have to say graffiti. And one of the problems, and this links to the bus station, is we caught 3 young men graffitiing on a Friday morning, and they were 10 years old. They went to school. There was nothing we could do about them. They were traced back. They were escorted back to their parents. And in my ward, which this does relate to the town centre, a lot of these families and these children live in this ward. So when we're talking about the juveniles at the bus station, the trouble that they're causing, we're talking about the litter, we're talking about graffiti, and we're talking about the fear of safety. We're actually talking about children under the age of prosecution. So where our town centre's being damaged, our feelings of safety are being damaged, our streets are being damaged, we're being graffitied, and there's litter. So this all adds to the feeling of insecurity when we're in town. And I thoroughly agree with Graham in the access into the town. We've built an island, and it's basically got round cobbles to stop us even walking across it. When I first started my shop, we talked about the lighting, and that was in 1998, and we're still talking about the perception of lighting, and it's something that women bring up constantly, but men don't. So it differs from the sexes as well. So I just want to say there's other things we can do that we aren't doing, and one of them would be to target the big businesses to help them clean up their own area as well. Thank you. And I agree Bank Street's much better. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Just a couple of points just on this sort of subject. It'll be really interesting, Katie, to see what the proposals are for the multi-storey area, because I think that whole area of the town we need to move what that whole area of the town's used for. And I'd basically like to see some residential, maybe flats going in there, so that people are actually, young couples, etc., might actually be living centrally in the town centre and then using the night-time economy, etc., and using local shops, etc. But again, it'll be interesting to see what the proposals are for the multi-storey area. On the ramp that goes on top of the bus station, as a young laddie, 15, 16-year-old, I worked in Prestos, and I'm giving my age away. And a lot of people might be unaware, but there's some major HGVs go over the top of that ramp at night time. Because I used to be the young guy taking the pallets off the top of the HGV and then taking it downstairs in the lift and stacking the shelves in Prestos. Prestos is no longer there, but I think there's other retailers in there now. So I can understand the problems with that, because these HGVs are pretty big. It's 1970s concrete. You mentioned engineers. I can understand why you need to make sure that's safe, because that ramp can be taking a heavy load. And the last thing is, I totally agree with Claire and with Graham about the access. I was unaware that the underpass, I've always thought, especially for maybe females late at night or what have you, I've always thought that having the underpass from London Road as the access to the town centre at that point at the Grand Hall, whenever something goes underground, to me that always brings danger. But I was unaware that the actual Burns Mall actually closed the automatic doors at 8 o'clock at night now. So to me that's something that as a council, when we redevelop that area, that's something we've got to look at. That's all I wanted to say in that.
Absolutely fair. We've tried in the past. David will be sick hearing it, approaching this private company. Graham.
It'll be really quick. Councillor Richardson's spot on. We really need to look at town centre living in that particular area. You've seen my comments. It's in the press about that whole area. One thing that the levelling up bid's brilliant. Really hope it's successful, obviously. But one thing I missed out was, and I've banged on about this before, one of the major problems for the 70s is that road from the bus station to the Sturrock Street Bridge is artificially raised for one reason only. And I've studied all the papers for Percy Johnson Marshall in the 70s to create an underpass. I spoke to Barry O'Donnell. A massive thing to bring that back down to the original level. And it would bring the Palace Theatre right back into the town centre and it would improve connections. So if we do one thing, I think that's really needed there. But Kevin might be able to add into that because that's to do with the roads, obviously.
No, thanks for that. Sorry, Kevin, you've been waiting. There's a few things to ponder. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. In terms of the bus station, there is a cleaning contract to be let for the bus station, and officers are just having a discussion just now with Stagecoach and our waste management team. Phase 3 of the Camaro bus station refurbishments out to tender with a target start date this year. And due to the phasing, the works completion date will be early 23, May to June 2023. In terms of the underpass and the access road along the front of the Palace Theatre, that would require a considerable investment to bring the road level back down. We would also require to carry out a lot of modelling work to see the impact in the town centre. So, you know, if the money's there from the council, we would take it forward, but it's a considerable investment. Thank you, Provost.
No, thank you. That was an interesting. Katie, yeah.
Here's just one last matter that Councillor Maitland mentioned, so that, you know, I think we'll leave the ramps where we are with that, but it was just about the young people that, you know, you had come across. And I just want to say that we're working very hard with council partners across education and across health and social care to work with young people, particularly involved in offending in the town centre. And we had a really excellent piece of work developed yesterday. So I'm really pleased to say that there is some restorative work going on there with young people who would normally not be able to, you know, under the age that would be able to do that. And I'm, you know, pleased to see that Charles is here and Linda, you know, have really worked together with head teachers and others. So we've come up with a really good approach there that we're developing right now based on live action that happened over the weekend.
Thanks. Claire, yeah.
Just to come back in that, before we went into the week or 10 days of mourning, we had very positive outcomes, as you said, and that was working with these young people. I do appreciate that, Katie, and I think it was a shame that what happened afterwards, because we were seriously making some progress there. And we really have to bear in mind, these are very, very young people that we're dealing with. It's like a Lord of the Flies situation here. So thank you. Appreciate that.
Right, folks, that was a very good long discussion over that appendix. We're going to move on to a child poverty action plan now, if that's okay. Is that okay? Ian?
Thanks, Provost. Yeah, so the third appendix is the Child Poverty Action Plan report. Without trying to point out, you know, members to the discussion later on this afternoon, but a lot of the content here will be covered in that session when we will have partners there as well. So happy to try and take any elected member comments today, but just to say that a lot of the subject matter will be covered at that spotlight session this afternoon as well. Provost, thanks.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, there'll be a lot of good work hopefully this afternoon done. Members, any issues or you want to hold your feast till this afternoon, or are there any issues related to this appendix that you would like to bring to this forum? Yeah, I'm looking forward to this afternoon as well. We'll just move on then, folks. Thanks for that. Move on to the last item, Appendix 4. And Ian, if you don't mind.
Yeah, again, Provost, and as Craig said in his introductory comments, this is a report that has already been approved by the IJB and is here for Council's endorsement. Thanks.
So that's the Health and Social Care Partnership Annual Performance Report. Craig.
Not just, I was presented it previously, Chair, and happy to take any questions on it. I think we've had a few questions in terms of the statutory performance indicators that relate specifically to health and social care anyways. We've picked up a few of those particular areas. The full detail of the report, as I said before, there's lots of case studies and testimonies from some of our service users as well, which is really helpful and just in terms of the context in which we operate. That full report's available on the website. It was published a few weeks ago when it was subsequent to it being approved by the IJB. So it's there for members' information if they want to see the detail around about it. As I say, it will find its way onto the NHS board and the Community Planning Partnership board this afternoon, and then probably November subsequently to that as well. But happy to take any further questions.
Thanks, Craig. Members, any ideas, any comments? From small seeds, great things grow. Councillor Mackay.
Provost. It's really just a comment, Craig. Thank you. And it's on your covering report at page 105 in relation to paragraph 40 and looking ahead. I suppose I was just surprised with the wording of that, given how strong, and I think rightly strong, Council has been in relation to the concerns that we have raised in relation to the National Care Service consultation. It's an incredibly bland paragraph that we've given here, and it doesn't give us any sense within this report about the level of concern that we have in relation to the introduction of the National Care Service. Is it possible for an additional sentence to be inserted in relation to this to ensure that we fully continue to capture what the concerns are of Council as a whole on relation to this subject?
You, Provost, in terms of the status of the report, it's a report to the Council, and it reflects what the IJB has already agreed. I don't know that there's any merit in adding a sentence to the report because it's here today for consideration, so adding something in later. But I think what you might want to do is simply include in the recommendations with reference to that paragraph a link back to the previous Council decision on the last discussion, which was a detailed discussion on the Council's response, collective response to the National Care Service Bill consultation process. So rather than change the report, perhaps it would be better to reflect Council's position, and if Councillor agreed, the point made by Councillor Mackay, and just build into the recommendations, noting the Council's response specifically to the consultation and linking it to para 44. Then it's in the minute. That's the point. I'm not being pedantic. If it's in the minute, it's still got life. If it's in the report's been dealt with. So it's just a thought, Provost.
No, thanks for that advice, David. Councillor Mackay, what was the terms of your proposed wording, and would you be happy if it could be incorporated into the recommendations?
Certainly, Provost, I'm always happy to take advice from the monitoring officer, who keeps us absolutely on the right path at all times. Again, I think an insertion to make reference back to the submission on the consultation, identifying that the Council has raised significant concerns in terms of what the impact of the introduction of a National Care Service going forward, both on the level of available service for people in East Ayrshire and impact on the Council itself. I think those two elements overall sum up the position of Council.
So just to suggest, I was going to suggest that if Council's minded today that you would agree to note with regard to paragraph 40 the ongoing consultation, and to reaffirm the Council's position as previously determined at the last Council meeting, and we can embed a link into this minute to the previous report in minute, which would then allow the reader of this report in minute to link back and see the full strength of the response that was set before Council, and the minute which further strengthened that response. So we can embed the detail and we can work on it, but the proposal was simply to be to note that the reference to the consultation and council taking the opportunity to reaffirm the position it previously reached on a collective basis with a link into that, or we can expand it if that's the will of council to bring out the specific points. But what we're simply doing is pointing to the previous decision and reaffirming that while we all have to go forward with this consultation process and deal with it, it doesn't mean anybody's particularly supportive of it at a political level within the council.
Thanks, Provost. And just to give further assurance to council, following, the decisions at last council, we wrote to both the Minister and to the Health, Social Care and Sport Committee, offering them either to come and see us and speak to us, or us to go and speak to them, for us to speak to them about, like our feelings, around what we've achieved here and how some of the proposals would seek to possibly damage, like that. So the letters were sent following the request for council the last time.
Leader.
Yeah, no, I see no harm in putting that link in there, just to emphasise that, because, in terms of the services we currently deliver and some of the good news story in this, there's almost an existential risk to with the future care strategy, which I think there's considerable merit in putting that link in and emphasising that. Maureen, look behind me for Maureen, but she's on the screen. No, I'd still endorse what Maureen's saying.
So, Councillor Mackay, what would the exact wording be?
I'm happy to accept what David has proposed. As ever, that's a more elegant solution, and I think it does link up and it continues on what the position of council is. So I'm satisfied with that as a proposal. Thank you.
No, thanks for that, Councillor Mackay. I would like to ask, sorry for putting you in the spot, David, but just so all the members understand the exact wording of what you were going to insert in the recommendations.
Well, there would be an additional recommendation, an additional decision beyond those that are already set out, by which council, noting the terms or the reference in paragraph 40 to the ongoing NCS consultation, council reaffirmed its significant concerns for the potential adverse impact of these proposals on service delivery at a local level, and reaffirmed the position previously taken, and then the link to the council minute from, was it August? September, this is September, the last council minute, and then the interested reader can follow that and see the strength of opposition there, and we will weave in significant concerns. So it's just reaffirming the position reached the last time.
Members, is that acceptable? Flat recommend, yeah. Councillor Mackay, happy with that?
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm very happy with that, Provost. Thank you.
No, thank you. Members, if there's no further, and we all understand the additional recommendation, yeah? Great. I'm going to move on now if there's no further questions on this part for the Health and Social Care Partnership report. Some of that maybe come out, be teased out this afternoon as well. Right, thanks folks. We're going to the last item now. That concludes the partnership part. Okay, yep. It's item 3, and that's East Ayrshire appointment of an elected member to the Ayrshire Economic Joint Subcommittee. Page 107 of your papers.
Provost, can I propose the leader, Councillor Reid?
Thank you. I've got a proposal and seconder for the leader for this position. Are there any other nominations? We're okay. Right, that's council meeting drawn to a close. The recording will now finish. Thanks everyone for your input today. Very good discussions, and I think we're all looking forward